Well, it turns out that last video was the pits, but this one really is the pits. Hello, welcome back to the circuit. My name is Mark and this is Scalextric Racer. Why are we talking about the pits today? Well, it's to do with my videos. So the last but one did really well. It got 1,500 views. But the last one, it only got 260. So in my mind, that was the pits. And that brings me nicely round to the subject of today's video. So you'll be aware that I wanted to change my circuit a little bit because I didn't like where the pits were currently located and I wanted to move them closer to the start and finish line. Well, I've been getting on with that in the last two videos. So what I thought I'd do today was show you what progress I've made. So I think I'll get out from behind this table and when I come round we'll have a proper chat. So I bought my Scalextric Pit Lane quite a good few years ago now. I'm going to say it was about 2016 or 2017, I'm not quite sure. But it was quite expensive and it was quite an outlay. I think it was about £70. I just bought it online. I didn't do much thinking about it other than I wanted one. But what I came to realise was the pit lane setup has either a right hand entrance or a left hand entrance. And I bought the left hand entrance one. But if you think about that, most circuits that you set up in Scalextric anyway tend to be clockwise because that's the way that the power base operates. It sends the cars in that direction. So if you go in clockwise and you enter your pits on the left, really that pit lane has got to be on the far side of the circuit, because if it's close to your start finish line, you'd need a right hand entrance, and I didn't think about that at the time. So when I've been talking about in my recent videos that I wanted to change my circuit and I wanted to get the pit lane closer to the start and finish line, what that actually meant was I had to reverse the direction of the cars entering. So I got a couple of options. I could either go online and just buy a new game and maybe a new lane and either sell mine or just mothball mine, or I thought it would be much more interesting to take the back off the pit lane and see how it all worked, and that's exactly what I've done. So coming up in this week's episode, I'm going to show you how I took the back off my pit lane and I've got it working in the other direction. Well, have I? You need to watch the video because it didn't really go that smoothly. And I've put it all in, warts and all. I didn't sort of pre-plan it, I just took the back off and had a go, and I've filmed it in real time. We'll edit it down a little bit or else it'd be too long, but it's quite interesting to for me to see how my mind works and for you to hear the industrial language that I had to use to get the job done. Also in the video, I've been getting on with some of the scenery. I've started building what I promised in the last episode was the city centre pub, so I've started work on that. I will show you a little bit of it and also show you a technique I'm using to create borders, one that I've stolen off the model railway guys, so I'll show you that as well. Sadly, I don't think we'll have time to get a car on the track. I'm not sure. I might have a go at doing that for you. Again, you'll have to stay watching to see if I get time to do it. So obviously it's a lot to cram into one episode, so I reckon that the best thing that we need to do is actually crack on and do it. So we'll start the video by having a look at some of the scenery work that I've been doing, and probably the most notable piece is this bar that I've been making. So I promised you this bar in the last episode. It's a city centre bar, and it is actually a real bar, although it didn't feature on the racing circuit that I'm doing a tribute to. It was definitely a well-known bar in the city. So you can see its name there, it's called Bar St Martin. You will actually know it by a much more famous name, but it has a little bit of notoriety about it. But the period that I'm setting this racetrack in, say it was Bar St Martin in these days, So I built it out of foam board. Let me go through some of the features. You'll notice that I've modelled it with the door closed, and that's a bit of an ironic nod to the licensing laws in the UK in these days. So the circuit's set in sort of mid to late 80s. And all day drinking hadn't quite started. I think all day drinking came in towards the end of the 80s. So most of the time, the door to pubs was closed, certainly in the day anyway. And that's how I've modelled this circuit, this bar. Let me show you some of the other features that I've done. So I've put on some period logos there. Anybody that used to have a drink in the 80s will know Brew 11. Well, certainly their dads probably used to drink Brew 11 if they didn't themselves. I've also put a sign there that's pointing the way to the station, because this bar wasn't very far from a very famous railway station. I've got a couple of UB40 bill posters that have been stuck on the wall in quite a haphazard manner. So do they still do that in city centres? We don't tend to go into town anymore, do we, these days? But the town was always full of posters that you couldn't quite understand, and they were generally torn and falling down. So we come round, we've got the licensing sign above the door there. The doors are closed. We've got an M&B menu on the wall there. And then let's come round this side and I'll show you the work I've done on the windows. So if you ever do any work with foam board, doing internal cuts is always really difficult, because it's difficult to get it perfectly square, but also the foam board gives you quite a rough edge on the inside. So although the front and the back is lined with a nice paper card, the inside is just raw foam. So every time I've done windows, I've never been that happy with them. So what I've done on these is I've made myself some little L-shaped section cardboard window frames. So basically I've got a thin piece of cardboard, scored it down the middle, bent it in half so it was like an L shape, painted it white, and then I've cut it to the right size and mitered it. And I think that's given me a much sort of squarer look to the window, one that's a little bit more realistic. The window panes, they've got evidence of being super glued in place with my fingers glued to them. Let's have a look inside the bar. So I made that bar counter, and then the backdrop there was just some pictures that I sourced off the internet and sort of repeated, cut and pasted them together to give me the full width of the bar there. The carpet, I just got a load of remnants of paint and just sort of dabbed it all over the floor, because I remember drinking in bars like this. You'd imagine that the carpets were made out of leather. They were that black and sticky, and all the pile had been worn away. So there was a phrase that we used to use, sticky carpet in the pub. So I've tried to model that a little bit there. So that's the inside of the pub detail. I haven't gone too far. With the detail, because most of the time there'll be a roof on this pub and it's going to be in darkness, so I need to fit some lights in there. And as I say, I've modelled it closed, so I'm not going to put drinkers in there, I'm not going to put barmaids in there or whatever. I'm just going to model it closed, so I haven't gone too much on the detail, but I hope you get a flavour of what I've done there and like it. You will appreciate that it's all a work in progress at the moment, so some of the painting does look a little bit dodgy, but it will get better. But what I wanted to show you was this sort of border area that I'm working on here. So this is an idea that I've stolen off people that do model railways and use ballasting. So let me show you what I've used to get this effect. So when I started modelling my Scalextric circuit, I was gifted some material that I've used to make borders with, and it's oxo rub or sprinkle. No, it isn't. That's just what I'm using to store it in. So I've got a massive bag of this stuff, and what it is little rubber pellets. So can you see that? This stuff is what you used to repair rubber floors. So if you've got a gym, or this was actually out of a stables, and if you've got a hole in your floor, so basically you fill it up with these little rubber pellets, and then I think you pour resin onto it to get a sort of solid surface and repair the hole. But the size of it, I mean, it would be absolutely ideal for somebody that was making a coal coal load for a model railway, but I'm using it to make borders for my Scalextric track. So let me show you the... So we're getting a decent blob of PVA glue on the bottom of the section. So that's quite a lot there. I'm just going to smooth that out with a brush. Blue Peter style. I don't normally do this on my videos, so this is all new. So a decent amount of glue on the bottom there, just bring it down to about here. And this is going to help the bottom level, so the bottom layer of the rubber pellets stick to the track. So there we are, that's that. And then simply, like we was ballasting on a model railway, we're going to pour this stuff into the gap. So as I say, I've got a massive bag of this. The bag is probably about as big as the pillow that you're sleeping on in your bed, but I've just put it into this little tin because it makes it easier to work with. So I'm just filling that in there. Am I running out? Got a bit more. Probably enough to just for the demonstration. And then we need a little bit of like a straight edge just to smooth this out. I haven't bought one down this side of the table with me because I'm trying to demonstrate to you. So I'm just going to do it with my fingers in this case. So basically we're trying to smooth this out so it's flush to the level of the track and also flush against the wall. So the people that do ballasting on model railways have got all sorts of tools that do this work for them. But I mean, this is working out to be quite cheap for me because you can buy proper material, but it's really expensive. Something else that I've used to do this sort of job is the little stones that you put on the bottom of a fish aquarium. So I think it's called aquarium substrate. I've used that in part of the track, and that's absolutely tiny, where these particles are quite big. These are probably about 4mm maybe across, 3 or 4mm. The aquarium substrate you can get less than 1mm, so it's absolutely tiny, little tiny dots. So I've used that in other parts of the track. What do you think? Think that's straight? So there we are, that's not too bad, is it? Now for the next part of the magic, you need all things that you wouldn't normally put anywhere near your Scalextric set. So we got a little empty bowl there. We're going to put a little dab of fairy liquid in there. Now this is for no reason other than it makes it seem cleverer than what it really is. But a little dab of fairy liquid, just a dot, there we are. It's probably a bit too much actually in this case. Then loads and loads of PVA. So a great big wedge of PVA. There you are, it's a bit heavy on the old glue. So I've seen people do this with quite a watery solution, and that works quite well, except for the foam board doesn't like it, because foam board is basically paper stuck to foam. If you get the paper too wet, it will lift away from the foam. So I've got some water here, and I'm not going to make mine too watery, so I'm going to add the water to the PVA, and then I'm going to mix it up with a brush till we get a decent consistency. And I think I probably have gone too wet there. I'm going to put maybe some more glue in there, because I want mine to be quite dry, quite thick, not dry obviously. Not sure about that. Let's put some more glue in. A little bit more glue because I want it to be thicker. Give that a shot. When I did this yesterday, I was basically dripping the water out of a tap, so I had much more control. Other than today, I've been sort of pouring it out of a cup, so I didn't have. Probably put a bit too much water in, but that'll do. Right. Now here is the clever part. Put that there. Basically what you do is you just pour this solution onto those stones, sort of puddle it in like this, let it flow down, Whoops, that's on my track a bit, but it will the box, it's PVA. I'll get it off in a minute. There we are. It's come onto the track quite a lot, hasn't it? Let's just scoop that in a bit. Oh, God, that's awful. I shouldn't have done that much. Oh no. Oh, let me wipe this off. There you go. Try not to disturb the stones that I've just laid. There we are. So the idea now is that PVA will sort of flood that area, and when it starts to go off, it will actually set like concrete. It sets really hard. So I don't normally do demonstrations on camera, and you can see why I don't do that, because that went a little bit wrong. Well, not wrong, but it's I didn't really want to flood it that much. But you get the idea of how it works, and probably on the next video I'll show you just how hard that's set. Well, there you are. It's actually morning now. I know that's quite difficult to get your head down when you're watching a video in one long sequence, but it's actually about 18 hours since I did that job on the track. So let's see how the glue is set and see if it's worked. So here we are. If I put my fingers on this now, it's actually quite firm. It's not quite dry yet. I think we're looking at possibly about another 24 to 36 hours before it's brilliantly dry. But again, already it's not moving, it's not going to go anywhere. And the longer you leave it, the harder the PVA will get, and the firmer it'll stick. Of course, with this being rubber, it's never going to be rock solid, because obviously the rubber sort of moves under your finger, you know, compresses. So there you are. So I'm quite pleased with these results, and I think it looks reasonably realistic, doesn't it? And it's been a cheap solution for me, because the rubber pellets were gifted to me. And if you look online for people that model railways, you'll see that they do much better instructional videos about how to do that job and how to, you know, ballast their track. So don't take my word as gospel, because I was a bit heavy-handed there. The glue mixture was probably not quite right, and I think it was a bit wet, and I spilt it on my track and all the rest of it. But I think the other lesson is, you know, just get on and do it, because it does actually work in the end, even if it looks a little bit of a mess. Anyway, you've come here because you wanted to see me rewiring the pits. So this job I did about 3 days ago. It was a bit painful, and it may or may not have worked. I could have an order on eBay for the new set of pits now. You don't know yet. But what's the sequence anyway? I filmed it in one long section. I have edited it down a bit because it's quite long, and there are some not deliberate, but there's definitely mistakes in there that I made that I had to correct as I went along. So anyway, what's the next segment? Do enjoy it, and then we'll come back here and we'll summarise it all up. So today we're going to try and reverse the entry into my pits. So my pits are what's called a left-hand entry. So the cars would normally come along here, this would flip, and they would go into the pits. Because I've altered the position of them, I now need them to be a right-hand entry, and that's actually impossible because this is fixed and there's no mechanism behind it, there's no solenoid. So this is a piece of track, the left-hand entry with a flipper that moves. See that? And there's obviously some sort of electronics going on behind this base that's secured by 4 screws. If we look at this one, so this has got a pin just there that's holding the flipper still, so this flipper won't move because it's been held by that pin. So that's got to come out, and then there's actually 4 screw holes that will marry up to the mechanism that was in the other piece of track. So in theory this isn't too difficult. So I think the thing to do first is to unscrew this. Oh, there's another part here. So behind this section with these 4 screws is the sensor. So that's the sensor that your car goes over. So there's a little LED reader that responds to the flashing light on the car that activates the flipper, and as I say, that's hidden behind this mechanism in there. And if we look at this piece of track, it also has the 4 screw holes, so everything should fit over quite cleanly. I'm just worried about the sort of how the connections are made. So every man has one trusted screwdriver. This is mine, and I'm going to start undoing some screws. I've removed the 4 screws and we're just going to prise this off gently. It's coming quite nicely. So that's that piece of plastic, look, that covers it over. So that was so the 2 corners, if you look, it's slightly tapered. The 2 corners go in, and that obviously goes towards the entry point. And I can see that there's a solenoid in there. So this is obviously magnetises in either way, and then that pulls the flipper from one side to the other, and it's obviously got a resting position. So let's see what's going on behind this section here. So again, 4 screws. So this one's got no, the base is coming off one. This one is just perfectly square, so there's no left or right. And we've got a circuit board in there that is, so it's held on by 2 pillars. There's no other screws in there. So just in there, can you see? This piece has 2 wires that are actually soldered to the rails. So this circuit board is fixed on by 2 pieces of solder, which means I've got to do some unsoldering. I'm not sure how much spare cable I've got, so I'm just going to slightly ease this cable out. There you are, that's a better view. Can you see those 2 solders just in there? Let's get the screwdriver. Just in there, connected to the rails. Just wanted to show you as well, there was a section there with 2 screws in it I've just unscrewed. See that? And if you flip that off, which is a little bit tricky, if I just get my nail underneath it, there you are. Can you see that's how they've made sure that there's power going to both sets of rails, because obviously this one is dead otherwise. It's, there we go. This rail would be completely dead otherwise because it's isolated. So to get power to it, they've just sort of bridged the connections there. So I just wanted to show you before I start breaking things how the pit lane actually operates. So if I bring a car in slowly, just gets stuck there, that's a dead piece of track, that's why it's getting stuck. Let's do it a little bit quicker. So if I bring a car in, it just goes straight on. However, what I'm going to do now is press the lane change button. So if you watch this flipper here, as I press the lane change button and bring it forward, see how it moved then? Let's do that again. So I've got the button pressed, so it should change lane. There you are. See how it went across? It doesn't seem to return, but I tell you when it returns, if I'd let the car go over without pressing the button, see how it flipped back then? So if you press the button when the car goes over, it flips, and if you press the button, just come over it without pressing the button, it flips in the other direction, and of course, so if it's already in the correct orientation and you're coming down fast, it will just go straight on. But there we are. So I think that's quite a good look at the black wire and the red wire. And there's my soldering iron, which is just like a little cheap eBay job or Amazon job. So I've got to just desolder that and that. Right, that one's unsoldered. Whether you caught that. There we are, it's off. Whoa. So there we are. So basically we've got this circuit board there with a red and a black wire. That feeds down here and then it operates this solenoid. So the thing I'm going to do now is prise the solenoid out really carefully. So how does this come out then? So I've just lifted that piece up there, which seems to be on 2 prongs. So if I look on this track, there's the 2 prongs that it will sit on. Can you see? Oh dear. So can you see 2 little tiny prongs just there and there? See, either side of that pillar there, there's 2 little plastic prongs. So that's, this solenoid was sitting on top of that, so I've just removed that. Now I've got to actually move the magnets, so that's these 2 bits here, and they obviously lift out. I just don't want things to spring apart and disappear, so I'm doing it really slowly. We are recording, aren't we? I'm sure the guys do this and do it like really quickly, but I'm a little bit frightened of it. I don't want to break anything. That one's out. There we are, it's free. Whoa! Bloody hell. So I think the thing to do now is to get the pin out the other side of the track. So let's do that. The name of the game is to remove this pin here out of the track, so it pivots there, but on the turn piece, the sort of passive end of the pit lane, this holds it in place. I'm going to get that out. So I think the thing to do here is you have to press it down as hard as you can. I've seen people do this online. Press it down as hard as you can. Whether you can see that, there's my thumb. So if I press it down, that lifts this pin up and you can just about get underneath it with a flat bladed screwdriver, or maybe a scalpel or a razor blade, something of that ilk. So I'm just going to do that now. I think I can do it with my fingernails. So little secret, I've actually tried to do that before and it did work. Just going to take it off camera just for a minute. So here we are, back on camera. There we are. This is a piece I'm working on. I'm sticking a blade underneath there, and I think that will come out now. There we go. It's free basically. There we are. That's out. The piece where the solenoid will go in is actually there. See in there when I'm moving it. So that's where it was pinned, but now I've moved that out. You can move it using the solenoid just there. So I think I can put the solenoid back on there. Put that little brace across that goes on those 2 pin pulls. The wire comes down this side, and it's just a question of doing that soldering. So here we go. That's it. It's in. That goes in there, those 2 go down there like that. That should now move freely, which it seems to be. This piece goes down on those 2 pin pulls, which are there. And then this wire comes down here, into there, into there. So this end of things is moving the flipper, so I think that I could put the cover on that. What do you think? Should we put the cover on and count that bit is completed? I better have to take it off. So that would just sit on there like that. So I've soldered it. Can I zoom in? There, look. Done it. I've crossed it over and soldered it. So what we need to do now is put that there, put that base on, which goes in like that. Needs to go for that little clip there. See that? So that goes through there, that goes through there. These are on. Put the top on. And I think I'm ready for the test. So let's like keep your eye on the blade, because this is our first commissioning test. And I'll give you a spoiler, it hasn't worked. So somebody who's watching this video has just watched me wire it up backwards. I didn't have to cross those cables. Didn't make sense, did it, that there wasn't enough slack and I was having to cross them? Should have known. But watch, look. So car coming towards the lane change, no button pressed. As it goes over the sensor, did you see it flip? So it's now going to direct it towards there. So no button pressed, and it goes off. Press the button, however. So I'm pressing the button on the control now, and it flips the other way. Did you see it flip there? So no button, flips that way. Button pressed, flips that way. Whether you can see that on camera. So this is the thing that we're looking at. You should be able to see it. Flips either way. So again, no button pressed. It's flipped to send it down into the pits. Button pressed. It's flipped the other way to send it straight on, and that's backwards, so I didn't have to cross those wires. So I've realised that's not the problem. It's not the problem at the end where I've just been doing the soldering on camera. So showing you how to solder it is useful, but don't worry about what direction you solder them back on again. What's important is the solenoid. But first of all, I want to show you that it does actually work now. So if I approach the pits without the button pressed, so I want to go straight on, as I go over the control, see the gate opened, and I can now go straight forward. So do that again, pop that over there. As the car approaches, the gate opens and I go straight on. Yet if I press the button, so the gate is set up so I'm going to go straight on, but if I press the button, as I approach it flips and then I can go into the pits. So do that again. As I approach with the button pressed, it flips and then I go into the pits. There we are. So it's now working. So how did I make it work? Well, it's quite interesting. Right, so this piece is now soldered incorrectly. There, look, that's my wonderful neat soldering. That's connected up just as it was before, with the red furthest away from me, black closest. I don't know, I'd explain that better, you work it out with a piece of paper. But that's soldered on now, that's going over there and fastens down. So this wire comes up here, up here, up here. Now this is a difficult bit. So depending on which way, what signal the sensor sends, this solenoid moves from one side to the other. and I realised that one magnet pulls it one way, one magnet pulls the other way, and probably the correct way to do it is to break into this cable, I would imagine, and cut it and extend it and flop it over. So basically connect the red to the black and the black to the red, and you're effectively like changing the direction of the input that comes into there. I'm not 100% sure though. What I did was I actually picked up the solenoid and I turned it over. So this, if you remember previously, if you go back and look in the video earlier, this didn't have the green side shining. It had a sort of plain side facing upwards. So the green side wasn't facing up, the other side was facing up. And this wire was actually on this side, but I've completely flipped it all over and reversed these two solenoids. I had to move these two little brackets around. Is that an around motion with my finger? And I've managed to get it all together. It's not perfect because this wire is sort of stretching across here, and these are quite sharp, so when it's the other way round there's little cutouts for these purple wires, and I'm not using them anymore, so it's a little bit sharp, they might get cut. But I've basically got a right hand pit lane now that works, so I'm just going to fasten it up and forget we ever done this job, because I shan't ever disturb it again. And it's working. So there you are. There we are. So the final job that I just need to do is put this little tiny pin back in. Can you see it on my hand there? I'm stuck on my ring. There we are. So that little screw's got to go into that hole, and that will hold this flipper in position. So it's a bit of a fiddly job to do, holding a camera. Go in. That's it. I've got it in. I'm just pushing now, so it's there. Look, it's gone in. That's in quite firmly. And now, if we look at that piece of track won't move now. I'm just going to try and get it flush. So I don't want it to be raised there. I don't think it is, but I'm just going to give it a real good push. And now I'm going to put my track back together. Right, there we are, the track's all back together and the pits are actually working. But I think what I thought I'd do next is actually explain to you exactly what just happened, because when I went into that job I thought it was going to be really difficult, but actually it turns out it wasn't too bad at all. So I want to just give you some of the assurance, if you try and do a similar job yourself, it's not that bad. So let me tell you about the soldering. I thought I was going to have to change connections over, work out which way the wiring was going and the polarity and all that business and alter it, but you don't. So basically you take the back off your pits, you'll find that it's only attached in one place by a red and a black wire. So you desolder that, move that onto the other side of the pit lane entry, solder that black and wire back in exactly the same orientation, and basically you've done it. However, of course, as you've seen when I did the test, the pit lane has still started working in the opposite direction. So the key was to swap over the solenoid, and I did that physically. I simply picked it up and flipped it over, but I thought I'd take you through that step by step, because for me it was quite an exercise in 3D thinking, and I think I've mentioned a couple of times recently I'm not very good at thinking in 3D. 2 dimensions I'm absolutely great in. So I'm going to put some pictures over up on the screen now, and I'll show you exactly how it happened. So when you very first get the back off your track and you have a look at the solenoid, this is exactly how it looks. So there's a black plastic bar in the centre. What you can't see on this picture is underneath that there's a prong that's going into the flipper on the track, and then those yellow and the 2 yellow squares are 2 magnets. One pulls that bar to the left and the other one pulls the bar to the right, and there's a bit of circuitry on that little brown circuit board which you can't see at the moment, and that's what operates it all. So my non-soldering method was like this. I basically carefully picked that out the track and I completely flipped it over, and that gave me something that looked like this. So what we can see now is on the black plastic bar, the prong in the centre is actually facing us, so it's represented by that little grey circle there. And also if you look at the brown circuit board, the components on that are now actually exposed to us. So there's 2 purple wires coming off that circuit board that disappear into the 2 magnets. So we'll talk about the purple wires shortly, but the first thing that we need to do is simply reverse that plastic bar so the prong is facing downwards. So once you've reversed that bar, you're basically looking at this. So the green circuit board, the electronics are exposed to us. The prong is now facing downwards, but now we need to concentrate on the two magnets, the two yellow rectangles on this picture, and the wires. So around those magnets there's two metal C-shaped brackets, so the little black cups that sit underneath. And because we've turned it over, can you see that the purple wires are now passing underneath those brackets? So if I tried to push that into the track, the purple wires would foul the fitting where it goes into, because they're underneath, they need to be on top. So we need to rearrange those purple wires so they can go into the track. But it's simple, because those little C-shaped back brackets, or U-shaped brackets I guess, they revolve as well. So basically you flip them away from yourself, so you know, towards yourself, over the top, all the way around and back underneath. So the brackets will now fit into the moulding that's printed on the bottom of the track, and those purple wires won't be in the way because they're now on top of the brackets, which is exactly what you want. The last problem that you've got is the black feed wire. So if you see down to the bottom right there, there's a black wire that feeds power to that circuit board, and of course it's now on the wrong side of the track. So on the other side of the track there's some little clips for cable management, and you want to get it back into that cable management if you can, but there's enough slack on it that it will simply just pull across. So you pull it across the grooves, across the two rails in the track, and then just put it back into the cable management on the left hand side of the track. So it really is that simple. I will say that when you first take the solenoid out of the track, it's like an angry snake. It's all wibbling and wobbling and trying to get away from you. So that's why I've done it in pictures, because I think it makes it so much more clearer. But hey, I'm just an old duffer and I managed to do it. So if you've got this problem yourself, if your pit lanes have got the wrong entry point, don't be frightened of having a go. There you are then. So now let's get on with the summary. So there we are, that's the end of another edition of Slot Track Racer, and my god, that felt like Blue Peter, didn't it? We did a show and tell and two different makes, so I really do hope that you've enjoyed it. So I've just been having a look around now. I can confirm that the ballasting I did, that's drying really nicely, and the pit lanes are definitely working, so that's all good, isn't it? I haven't got time to put a car down the circuit today. I mean, we're into 40, nearly 50 minutes I think on this video. So we're not going to do that today, but I promise you that I will do that in the next episode, because we really have got to see if I've made the circuit faster or slower. So next episode, definitely I'm going to start getting those cars out that have already done the 2-minute challenge, and we'll get them going round again and we'll see what the new times are. And so there we are. I really do hope that you've enjoyed this edition. So don't forget, if you have enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up down below and maybe share it with a friend. If you didn't enjoy it, then you can click the thumbs down, but I prefer if you just found something else to watch on YouTube. There's loads of stuff out there. Comments as well. I'm finding your comments really interesting. Somebody actually trolled me this time, which was quite amusing. So yeah, any comments you want to make, do put them down below. I will endeavour to answer them all. If you want to have a stab at guessing where this circuit is supposed to be, or if you recognise the pub that I made, put that down in the comments, because I know one guy's rumbled me. He knows exactly what I'm working on and he's given me a couple of ideas. But yeah, just have a guess, see if you think that you know where the circuit is. Other than that, if it's the first time that you've found me, or if you've found me here before and you haven't subscribed yet, please do consider subscribing. It doesn't cost you anything, and as I keep on saying, it gives me a massive ego boost, and I'll be able to do much more content just as good as this episode has been. So there we are. That really is the end of the episode. There's nothing else to say other than, if I don't see you through next week, I'm definitely going to see you around the circuit. Okay then, so bye for now.